Well, if you could kick us off by sharing some background about how you came to Middlesex Community College and ultimately ended up being one of its most inspiring leaders.
I thank you for that. You've always been so kind, and I appreciate it. Well, I'll just kick it off. It started in 1976. I was teaching at the time at Salem State and replacing an ill tenured professor. And the Harvard Bulletin position at Middlesex Community College, I had no idea where it was. And I applied for it and, got the job and went in as a faculty member in business for, oh gosh, maybe 6 years or so, and then became dean of the business area. And from there, the vice president of administration and finance, and then the presidency. So it started in 76 and ended in 2015.
And do you think that I'm sure part of that had to do with your background and expertise in business, just knowing how to run things financially?
Right.
I'm sure that was part of it.
I think it was. Matter of fact, I always felt, and I had a background in real estate too, my first life.
Okay.
We were home builders and apartment house builders. And so I had an interest in real estate and properties in general. And from there, I was just fortunate enough to combine those skills, I guess, and teaching. But I started as a high school teacher right out of Salem State back in 1963, and did that until I started a family, and I just left.
Right.
So,
go ahead.
If you could kind of share, when we talk about Middlesex Community College, some people listening to this might not know where the original campus was.
Oh, sure.
Was around it. And then I think we want to talk about the move to the city of Lowell.
Okay, that's great. The campus opened in 1970 at the Bedford VA Hospital. And on the grounds of the VA, we occupied two buildings, historically called Building 8 and Building 9. And they were the psychiatric wing of the hospital. So we had a college emerging in that kind of a location. So ever since we went there, the goal was to get out of there as soon as you could and occupy permanent space somewhere and get enough money to build the college the way it should be built. But the college didn't really have that springboard with a capital appropriation for a good number of years. And it wasn't until Evan Dobell came in that we actually got the capital appropriation to do the building. But what I always credit President Houlihan with, and I still to this day will say, he gave us a great foundation in the faculty ranks. He hired the best people and the most experienced people and people that loved what they were doing, loved teaching. So we had a great academic background.
Right.
And the VA campus was supposed to be, in Middlesex, was supposed to be a campus for the health professions. So we were designed, if you will, to offer nursing programs, the dental hygiene programs, rad tech, sonography, anything that dealt with the health professions. They were going to regionalize those programs, and Middlesex was designated as one of those regional centers. That was done by the Regional Board of Community Colleges when the college first opened. So with that, Lowell came about actually in, I think it was 86, when we first started hearing about that the powers that be in Boston were trying to figure out how they could establish a college presence, an institution that could work with the university and transfer students to the university. And with that, we were fortunate enough at the time to have Senator Paul Sheehy in a leadership position in the Senate. And he worked with us to gain those appropriations and to really worked, and we did a master study saying, where should the college be? And that master study said, given that you're Middlesex County, you should have a presence in the city of Lowell, and you should also have a presence on the 128, it was called at that time, the High Technology Highway.
Right.
So the master study came back with those two objectives. And with that, you know, the goal was, okay, what can we do in Lowell? And we started in Lowell, and very few people know this or even recognize it. We started in Lowell General Hospital.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Bob O'Donnell, I think was his name. Donahue, was it Donahue or O'Donnell? I should remember him. He was the president of the hospital at the time, and he invited us to establish a presence for our nursing program because we didn't have nursing labs. We didn't have any labs. So he said we could come to Lowell and use his space until our permanent space was built. And he kept us there until we built the Health Science and Technology Center in Lowell on Middle Street.
Right. So
that was
so Carole, about what years are those that you're at General Hospital?
That had to be probably 84, 85.
Okay.
With the nursing program.
Right. And then you moved from there to where on Middle Street?
Then we went to then we went to the Wanalancet Mill.
Oh, okay.
And we rented space there in, I think it was probably 1987, and had enough space to open a small library, some classrooms, and we used the cafeteria at the Wanalancet. We just blended in with the other tenants in that building. But we opened in fall of '87 with just under 400 students. And that was under the leadership of Molly Sheehy, who the college hired as an outreach person for us. And it was her really tenacity that made that campus, that Wanalancet presence work. She did a terrific job in welcoming students and faculty and made the best of the small spaces that we had. And we kept that space with a group of students that I think grew to about 800 before we moved.
Right. And can you say something about what the city was like at that time? You know, that you have the institutional presence, but what was it like, you know, the students themselves coming in, the faculty coming in? Is there any memory of what the city was like? It was, I mean, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it was transitioning with the Lowell Historical Park is just starting to come into fruition. So can you say something about that, just what the city was like then compared to maybe what students' experience is like today?
Well, we had great memories from that initial entree into Lowell. I can remember at the time some of our sister campuses trying to open space in different municipalities around the state and running into a lot of resistance about, you know, where are you going to build, and, you know, are you going to occupy and take properties off of the tax rolls. We had a lot of that resistance in the system. But the word I'd used for Lowell and our coming into Lowell was very welcoming. We came up with a bus full of faculty, administrators, just to get a sense of what the city was like. They had, the national park had, I can still see it to this day, and I have some photos of it. They hung a big welcome banner across Merrimack Street. And it was like, wow, they want us here.
Right.
You know, they were interested in what we were doing, and they had the vision to see us as a real potential partner for a lot of the initiatives that they would grow into. So they were very, very welcoming. The city administration was, the university was, everybody just did as much as they could for us at that time.
So how did the college come to occupy the Wang Training Center building opposite Memorial Auditorium?
Oh, that's an interesting, they're all interesting stories. You know, when you think back, I have to jog my memory because it was a while ago, but the college, as I said, the master plan said you'd have two locations, Bedford and Lowell. The original location being Bedford, the construction or the plans through DCAM, at that time it was DCPO, we did the program planning for Bedford first. And
Right.
when Bedford was done and we spent what we could spend down there, we had maybe $14 million left over to do something in Lowell.
Okay.
And so we went out to bid. We worked with DCAM. We worked very closely with the Lowell plant.
Right.
They were a true partner to us through my presidency, for sure. They guided us through a lot of waters that, you know, we could have gotten buried in, but they did a great job for us. And they basically helped us scout out, along with DCAM, potential sites for a campus in Lowell. And we looked at, you know, we looked at the Boot Mills because they had come in. We looked at the Lowell Sun building.
Oh, wow.
We looked at a lot of downtown buildings. But then, you know, Wang just up and left. So, you know, nothing could compare to the Wang Center because it was a classroom-centered building to begin with.
Right.
So it gave us the ability to move right in.
Right.
Almost immediately. I think we only took a few months, and
That's
we
amazing.
moved in mid-semester, as I remember, mid-spring semester. But we went out for bid and got all kinds of, you know, responses, including from the Wanna-Lancet. They wanted us to stay there.
I was going to ask if you kept both, but you didn't. Once you got Wang, you left Wanna-Lancet?
Yes, well,
Okay.
we didn't leave Wanna-Lancet until I think we had the Health Science and Technology buildings on Middle Street, which was in '94. We kept it because we needed the space, and it had to be. We really transitioned. And we also had a campus in Burlington. We had a Burlington Middle School, so we needed to transition out of that. The programs that were there also had to move. So we were playing, like, you know, musical chairs with our programs and our campus activities through all the different potential sites. But the Wang building, if you will, basically was so ready for us in many ways, but it lacked one major thing for us, and that was you couldn't put any laboratories in there. The way the building was constructed, all the utilities were in the core of the building.
Right.
So there was no way, it would have been not feasible for the college to try to build out science labs and nursing labs and health labs, those kinds of things. So when that property came on board, DCAM really wanted us to go with the Wang Center. We really did too, because we saw the functionality of it right away. But we told them we would need more space because we couldn't do the health programs that the master plan said should be in Lowell.
Right. Right.
So with that, we got a commitment from DCAM that they would support us in looking for more space, but we didn't have any more capital money. The money was gone. It was like, I think we paid 11.5 for the Wang building. They built it for like 25 million. We paid 11.5 for
Wow.
it.
Wow.
Yeah, if you did an analysis of what the Commonwealth has spent on capital infrastructure for Middlesex, they definitely got their money's worth, because what we did is we got all kinds of buildings, and we just were fortunate enough to come across some good opportunities. So so it was with that commitment from remember Gordon King was the head of DCAM at the time. Jack Bradshaw also was instrumental in this, as I remember, and basically, you know, said, okay, you can do it if you can pay for it yourself. You can, you know, get additional buildings if you can figure out a way to pay. So fortunately, we had rental contracts with the Wanna-Lancet, and they were costing us a good deal of money. So we showed a mathematical way that we could save money by getting rid of our rented space everywhere and getting a bond that, through HEFA at the time, to purchase the buildings on Middle Street. And that's how we acquired Middle Street. We were the first college that did a bond offering on its own. At the time, we managed to bring in 2 other colleges for smaller amounts of money. I think it was Greenfield Pittsfield, and they were looking to borrow like $500,000 or $1 million, but we borrowed $8.5 million and bought Middle Street, and then worked our programming for health science and technology into Middle Street.
Right.
So that's how we acquired the Middle Street properties, both the Derby building and the Talbot building.
Right. So though it never occurred to the to yourself or the powers that be to say, well, we don't have room for health science type instruction, we're saying goodbye to Lowell. I mean, it seems like, you know, you had a challenge there to say, well, that Wang building doesn't do everything we need. The challenge there was to say, well, we'll stay in Lowell and find a space. So it just seems there was a real commitment to stay in the city.
There was for sure. I think both in Boston as well, Governor Dukakis at the time was very committed to Lowell. I remember sitting in a meeting with him, and he said, now, why are you doing Bedford? Why are you building Bedford?
Wow.
You know,
Yes.
shouldn't all of this go to Lowell? And now we already had construction started and everything at Bedford, so it wasn't feasible. Right. But he was very committed to community colleges in cities. And he thought that's really where they belonged. He was a strong believer of that. He thought students should be able to take public transportation.
Yeah, that was one of my
and get to school. Yes, right. That was one of his own personal, you know, wishes. And right. So, you know, we were fortunate enough that we had the right people in DCAM, the right people in the governor's office, and the right people in the Senate, between Paul Sheehy and then Nancy H. and Sullivan was critical to us after Paul left. So we had the right people, and they worked with us and, you know, helped us get things done.
Right. So can you then maybe go through, after you acquire Middle Street, you then do seem to go on a building acquiring spree.
Right. Well, we figured out we can do this. We figured, well, this isn't so hard. We can do this.
Right. So was the post office the next building? Your library?
Actually, before we bought Middle Street, when we dedicated the Wang building, I remember a press conference on the top platform of the front of the building with Paul Songus and myself and, you know, the DCAM people, and everybody was thanking everybody for helping us get the Wang building open. And we were looking across the street at this building,
right? That
just looked like it looked like it belonged to Middlesex. It had, if you know, our Bedford campus is neo-Georgian design, right. And right. It just looked like it belonged to us. And we were joking about it on the platform. Right. We were saying, "Now that's the next building right there." And but at the time, it was boarded up, and there was talk about it becoming a shelter for the homeless. And there were all kinds of city issues with it. So the one thing we made a point never to do, and it worked out for us. I'm not so sure it would work all the time, but we never crossed horns, if you will, with the city. We always worked kind of with them. We went in and said, look, we're interested in this. What else is on schedule for this kind of property? We did that with the hotel. Jackie, you probably heard this story. When we bought the Wang building, we also wanted to buy the hotel and do the both of them. And we figured we could use classroom space, make classroom space in the hotel and run it through a restaurant management program. We even had conversations with Johnson and Wales to partner with us on it. But the city really resisted that. They said, no, we want a first-class hotel. So we said, okay, we backed off because they said, we don't fight City Hall. We like to work with City Hall, but we don't fight. And that's kind of what we did. And so we just went on to, okay, that building is in our site. Middle Street was a project because it was a former bank building. Those two buildings and bars. There were bars in both of the buildings. Right. And so we occupied a lot of buildings that were previously bars in the downtown.
I'm sure something could be made of that.
they were helpful to us in getting a lot of that stuff squared away. So we had very good working relationships with the planning department, with City Hall, and then, who was the city manager, and just try to make logical sense out of what the opportunities were and, you know, what might work for the college.
So just taking it a little bit outside of downtown, as we know, one of the things that was really, in addition to what we did in downtown, one of the things that was important to so many of the leaders in the city of Lowell was to maintain the elegance of the beautiful homes in Belvedere. And they were fallen into great disrepair, that's Smith House.
Right.
And it's just such a great story of a community coming together.
Right. Yeah.
And again, secure and stabilize that building and now make it into the unbelievable landmark that it is today.
Oh, thank you.
That story.
Well, that's an interesting one too. I was driving to the college one morning and I was coming right by Kittredge Park and my phone rang in my car and it was Paul Saunders. And he said, Carole, he said, how you doing? I said, great. How's everything going? Great. Carole, I want you to take a look at a piece of property. And he said, the Nesmith House. And I thought, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know its history. I didn't even know where it was. And I said, you got me in my car. I'm right by Kittredge Park. And he said, well, look out your window to the left. And that's the Nesmith House. And there's this big boarded up, you know, what at one time must have been a spectacular mansion. We know it was. And I said, okay. And he said, do you think, you know, I said, well, I'd have to talk to the trustees. And I was fortunate too that my trustee board had a lot of entrepreneurs on it. They were business leaders in the 128 belt mainly. And they let me, you know, venture into these different opportunities with guidance and help from them. And I said, well, I'd talk to the trustees, would take a look at it and see what we might use it for. And when we went inside, it was just a disaster. I don't know if you remember what it looked like in those days, but you know, there were no floors, there were no ceilings. The plaster was beautiful originally, but all broken apart. And it was a pretty big mess. And my foundation board came out to a meeting there to take a look at it. And I remember David Basile, who's an alum from the university and now still on my foundation board, and Jim Henderson saying to me, Carole, if this one slips by you, don't worry about it. It was like, you know, it's a huge undertaking here. So I thought maybe we can get the Volk School to help us clean it up and make use for whatever kinds of functions we could run in there. And so I reached out to Bill Collins, who was the superintendent of Lowell Volk at the time, and he came over with me and went through it with me and said, he said, you know, we could help you out, do a few floors at a time or a few, you know, rooms at a time. So that was an option for us, and we just kind of held on to that. And then one of my foundation chairman at the time was Susan Alexander, and she was an attorney in Boston. And she said to me, Carole, have you ever seen those designer show houses that they run where they fix up the houses and everything? And I said, I just was at one in Marblehead that summer. And she said, why don't we call them and just see what they have to say? So I said, okay, we'll just give them a call, bring them up. And we did that. And they looked at it and basically said, if you can get it, we thought they'd want to do like the first floor. But when they came in, they said, no, they would really want to do the whole house.
Wow.
So that was a big deal. And we didn't have any money because our foundation had just started. So we didn't have any money. Maybe, I don't know, maybe $10,000, something like that. So I said, well, if we can get some support for it. So Kendall Wallace helped me out and took me to meet some of the city fathers at the time. And I met, quite a few of them that day, and many of them made commitments to me for a room. They would have a room named after their family or whatever. And so, with the help of Nancy Donahue, who walked over literally the next day with a check, that's such an inspiring family, such a role model for the rest of us, such a wonderful family. And she is an individual as well. And they said they wanted the oval room downstairs, and George Baracus wanted the oval room upstairs, and 9X wanted another room. And before you know it, we were collecting, resources that would be enough to get started. And then we were working with the North Shore Jewish Community Center for their Designer Show House team. And we needed a few $100,000 to make a commitment to them. So one of the people that Kendall introduced me to was Elkin McCallum, and I didn't know Elkin. That he was a donor for a scholarship program for one of our special scholarships. But I went to see him, and I had dinner with him one night. They pulled together some city leaders for a dinner somewhere in one of the buildings downtown. And I happened to be sitting next to Elkin, and I was telling him I was trying to get him to support a room, basically. And Elkin, being Elkin, said, well, how much do you need? Just how much do you need? And I said, that the contract is $200,000 with this group. So, okay, you got it. So they arranged a loan with the foundation, and we got that seed money to get started. And then the designers came in and made it beautiful. And when it was done, we had a big gala and celebrated. And Evan was very, not Evan, but Elkin was very pleased and said to me, rip up the note. You don't owe me anything. You just, and he said, I want you to buy all the furniture that's in it. Now, the furniture from a show house was, very, very expensive rugs and everything. So I said, well, we don't need that. We don't need that. I said, but if we could keep the drapes and some of the key pieces. And he said, keep what you want, and they paid for it. So it's a remarkable story of a real, and it's a real community effort. I mean, everybody came on board. It was terrific. It was one of those things that I said I never lost sleep working at the college with any of these projects except the Nesmith House, because there was nothing behind it except the benevolence of the community. And I wasn't sure how far that would go. And I had a foundation board member, Arthur Gutierrez, who owned a lot of shopping centers in the Burlington area. And he was on my board. He basically, we ran out of time to get some of the stuff done. And we needed to get a brick patio floor in front of the main floor of the entrance of the Nesmith House. And we needed a driveway. We didn't have a driveway. And the show house was opening, like weeks later. So he said, okay, you just get the supplies. I'll get my guys down there. And along came Mr. Gutierrez's construction company and did the pavers at the front entrance and the driveway for it. But that was, and we did that like we were going through a phone book. We didn't have an asphalt company, and we were basically, Jim Mullen and I were a company that sold asphalt, so we paved the driveway. And that's when, we thought of a construction company, not necessarily an asphalt company. And that's when we thought of Arthur Gutierrez, and his construction guy came right out and made it happen for us. So there's a lot of people to thank for all of these, projects.
That sounds like a great case study, like you say, in community effort, that just all the different entities that were involved in that one project. From the initial phone call from Paul Songus, all the way then to the end. They made it happen.
Well, I know the Designer Show House last minute said you have to paint the house. And you know how big that house is. And we said, paint the house. We don't have the money to paint the house. So Chet Atkins we called Chet Atkins and we said, what can we do? We need painters and paint. So he was involved with some paint, environmental paint company. So he arranged to get us the paint, and the painters union in Lowell got a team of painters to come and paint the house.
Oh,
And
wow.
they did it on a weekend, all these union painters for free. All
Right.
they wanted in return was an article in the newspaper. So I
Right.
went back to Kendall and I said, okay, we got the painters, but we have to do a piece on them. And
Right.
we got the house painted.
Right. That's
So
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
there were a lot of stories like that around that
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's
Well,
a special place.
the not to keep it just so focused on the buildings, but that is part of it. You mentioned Nancy Donahue, and so one of the other buildings, the railway station building,
Mhm.
is now the Donahue Family Arts Center.
Right.
So maybe you could say a few words about not just that building, but the Donahue's connection and why it is an arts center.
Well, they have a strong commitment to the city, but a very strong commitment to the arts. With the work she did historically, both of them did at the Merrimack Repertory Theater. And we always felt as a college, and we had a plan actually that went nowhere, but we had an architect come in town and really with a very broad vision for a big art center on the Davidson Street property. And it was just too big. It was too big for the city. It was too big for us. When the bottom line came in, I think it was something like a $65 million project.
Oh,
and
wow.
that once the price tag came in, everybody, threw up their hands and said, we can't do this. So what that left for us as a college is no home for our performing arts programs. We had them in the little restaurant there and bar, again on the edge of Davidson Street. I don't know if that even is still there. I think it may be. And we put them in there temporarily. But I felt personally that was the one part of the master plan that didn't get done. Everything else was done, but that wasn't done. And those faculty members were just so appreciative of any little thing you did for them, that they were such troopers around all this. They understood when it didn't happen big, that we had to figure out a way to have it happen smaller. And they were great. And they, opened up the door for us to thinking of another property. And we always looked at that, Boston and Main Depot, because it's a beautiful building. I mean,
Right.
the one thing I think the college and the city has by far some of the most beautiful buildings of any city around. For a city its age, and it's just, to me, they're magnificent. And this was one of them.
Right.
And so we try to figure out how we could gain, access to that property. So we had a process that we used through the federal government that allowed us to get a parking lot from the VA to transfer it to the college. So we wanted to use that same process to get the Boston and Main building transferred to the college. And Nikki was very helpful to us in that process. And the Donahues just were always there for us. They just were people that, no matter what we were trying to do, they understood it. They understood the role the community college plays in the city. They understand and support strongly the university. I mean, they just are extraordinary people. So I think Lowell has been fortunate not to have great institutions, but to have great families that are committed to the city, because people can very easily move and leave behind their roots. But these families did not do that.
Right.
So,
no, and that, Carole, that's exactly what speaks to our project. Like you say, that they were committed, and that they, as a family, were reaching out and working with you. They reached out and they're working with the university, with the MRT. So again, yeah, this is just another great example of of the sense of social responsibility that we're trying to focus on with the project. And then with that, I'm sure your faculty are very happy with the end result, because I can tell you the interior is phenomenal. Wow. And the architect, I don't know how you got that architect, but that your architect was great. I don't know if the school faculty or people were on the.
No, we were just fortunate. We had, gosh, I can't remember her name. She was the CEO of that firm. When we went out to bid for space for that center, we had all go through the DCPO process. And so now, so we had a meeting with the proposals for the art center. And with all the proposals came the architects that had done the Hasty Pudding building for Harvard. And they put on such a presentation. I mean, she compared that building to a jewel chest.
Yeah.
And she showed how all these things were going to work in that building. And people didn't believe it. You know, people said, oh, no, that's never going to happen. It's not enough space. It's, you know, I said, well, we have to pare down what we think we want to as a college. Because, you know, when you start building things, everybody wants everything.
Yes.
And you got to pare down, you know, this is what we have, and you know what's more important to do. And the faculty worked with us on the project itself, yes, but it was the architect herself that and her team that really put all those pieces together. No, I wrote her after opening day there. I flew up from Florida for that, and I wrote her and told her how much I appreciated the execution of her vision, because it was just so perfect. And and the faculty members themselves worked, you know, all the spaces and decided how things should be, and they're very experienced too. So so I'm happy that they have a space they deserve. And I got a nice picture from Kevin Harkins, our great photographer for all these years, of that building lit up at night. And I look at it every once in a while and I say, that's, you know, that's a nice culmination of your career. Now go to Florida. So anyway.
No, it is, like you say, the architect said it was a jewel on the outside, but they've really made it a jewel on the inside too. It really,
they did a great job.
Yeah. And also, again, it's, you look at the old photos, it's another building that was kind of on the skids. And
well, that
really is a vital part of
that's where the national park comes in as a partner, though.
Yes.
Because the national park has always been a partner with anything that you wanted to do. We couldn't have gotten the building initially without the national park. And that's just the way the city works. And they work their magic, you know, through their channels, and we do the grind work, if you will, through the state. And hopefully you get something in the end. And we've been fortunate enough to do that. We wind up having to pay for our own studies sometimes, and not everybody had to do that, but we figured we got everything that we really needed. And now it's finished. Now they're redoing everything. What am I saying? It's finished. They're redoing everything. Right. Yeah.
Quite an astounding legacy. I wonder if you could describe how you felt the day that they named the Wayne Training Center.
I just got goosebumps when you said that, Jackie. I remember it was a snowy day. I don't know if you remember. We had a snowstorm in the morning. And it was a dedication of that building. And my son had flown in from California, and they were all saying, we had a lot of snow in Manchester, where I live, and they're all saying, this should be postponed because, you know, it's too snowy, it's too bad a day, people won't come. But everybody came, and they dedicated the building, and I'm very humbled by it. And when I drive into the city now, I joke, I'll ask people who are around all the time, is my name still up there on that building? So it was quite a thing. I mean, I certainly didn't expect it. I didn't do what I did for that reason, but it was nice to be recognized in that way. I thank the trustees for that and their willingness to do that. And, you know, it's a beautiful building. It symbolizes so much, because it's to me, it symbolizes the strength of the city. To have buildings like that just, you know, fall into other purposes. I think Dr. Wang, would be very pleased with what's up there today. and certainly the state should be too. It's a great facility. It really is. And it was from the day we moved in. We're always very happy there. And we just figured out, ways to get things done that were a little unconventional, a little different.
So a number of times that you had some great partnerships, and I think you've already said it, but if you could, summarize to the audience, how would you describe the ethos of Lowell? What makes Lowell different?
I think of Lowell as a very noble city. I think of it kind of is represented in its architecture. It's old, it's strong, it's resilient. It opens its arms to everybody. I mean, we were a community college. I'm sure they didn't know what we were all about when we were coming into town, and they welcomed us and they worked with us because they could do it for the benefit of everybody. The public school programs that we got engaged in, the charter school, I mean, all these things happen because of the spirit that underlies, that noble city of Lowell. It just is there. I hope it always stays there. It's been there for hundreds of years, so it probably will. But there's a lot of pride that exists in the city that was evident in everything that we attempted to do, that they wanted to be proud of what was happening. And we tried our best to be on the plus side of all those stories for the city and do what we could to leverage what we had. I'm a strong believer in leveraging opportunities. And I think we leveraged opportunities with the public school, but because they were willing to partner with us, definitely with the university, where our students would have an opportunity to go on and complete degrees. Just so many different, organizations in the city. So we could just go on and on. We did a publication on partnerships too that we should get in your hands as well, because it really speaks to what the city is willing to do if you're willing to work alongside of them.
Yeah. Well, and I was also thinking, if you're speaking of the students, that by having this urban campus with these historic buildings downtown, it must give the students themselves a sense of Lowell's history, right? It must connect them, and that they would feel part of that continuum of being part of this ethos
Right.
of Lowell. Did you somehow get some sense of that with the students?
We really,
I know a lot of them love that, going to the library in the post office. I know that.
oh yeah, that turned out, that turned out great. But that was it turned out beautiful like that because of a woman that was the designer for the Nesmith House. We met Sue Adams, who was one of the designers at the Nesmith House. And when we went to do the federal building, her style kind of fit that building. So we reached out to her and said, we've got this opportunity. And she did, the magic inside. She was the one that helped us work with the state on the finishes and everything. So, one thing led to another. And there was just always this kind of a reciprocation of different efforts, if you will. So, but I think that, it was a great, I look back so fondly at my days in Lowell. I still feel I'm very much a part of the city, and I'm still glad you remember me, when it comes to things like this, My son said to me, "You're doing what? You're doing an interview?" And I said, "Yeah, with the university." He said, "Oh," he said, "I thought you were retired." I said, "There's no such word as truly retired." So
No, there is not. No, there's not, especially for these memories and stories, because otherwise we have no record of it,
Right.
Like I said, all these different examples you've shared with us really show how there were people that loved the city and wanted to remain invested in the city. So, yes, you were the perfect person to interview for this.
Well, I know when I traveled, I used to travel a lot for the college. I'd meet people all the time. And every once in a while, somebody would surprise me and say, "Oh, I'm from Lowell."
Right.
You could be in any state, in any country, and people would say, "I'm from Lowell." There's people are very proud of that, which is great. And that's what you want to hang on to. And you want the newer generations to feel it too. And I think that's part of, the benefit of projects like this, that that they understand the history more. and that's something that I think the colleges could make even maybe more of an effort to do.
Any other, we did have that nice wrap up question about the ethos, but if there's any other particular point.
No, I have to give credit to my trustees, every single board, every chairman, Jim Henderson, and all of the others who allowed us to reach and do things that weren't done before, and didn't discourage us. And also, I had a great administrative team and a great faculty team. And the administrators, you know, you could come up with an idea and then it goes to somebody, and you all know it's somebody's responsible for it, and they come back with a project well done. I remember after we did, I forget which building it was, them saying to us, Carol, can we take at least 6 months before we get started on the next one? I said, no, you'd be bored if you did that. And you know, but I had a team that was pretty dynamic and very competent. And so they, you know, they really came through with everything.
Right.
So any of us in these positions stand on a lot of shoulders.
I just want to give you a chance. You were speaking about the next generation. And if you were going to be speaking to a class of business leaders, you taught business yourself, what would you say to them about why is it important to do the right thing?
Boy, that's a great question. You would hope they would know what the right thing is and just do it. But I think in the world we live in today, it's really hard to come to grips with that. It's important because it's our legacy. It's what's going to come after us. And do you want things to be stagnant? Do you want them to decay? Or do you want them to grow and thrive? And they want their businesses to grow and thrive. And so it's a natural that institutions have to grow and thrive. And students need that too. They need to be, you know, nurtured as well. And I think Lowell's fortunate. It's got, you know, a public school system that works collaboratively. It's got a community college. It's got a university and doctoral programs. You know, we used to say you can go from kindergarten to your doctorate within the city limits.
I was thinking that same thing. Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing if you think about it. There aren't many cities other than maybe Boston and Worcester, or, you know, the major cities that can say that. So
Right.
I think the business leaders need to play a strong role in who you are and what you become as an institution. And they need to support you in ways that, you know, they perhaps haven't in the past. But I think you have to prove that you're worthy of their support too. So I think it's, again, it's a two-way street. Yep. You prove that you're worthy of it, you get it. In one way or another, you get the support. And that's basically, I think, what happened to us as a college.